So a case in point is Vincent. He was a journalist, and he had put up in his cubicle a painting by Gauguin, one of the Tahitian nudes that Gauguin loved to paint. And this somehow, quote-unquote, offended, one of his colleagues. It was obviously a very politically correct company where you are responsible for everybody else's state of mind. Don't get me started on political correctness, okay? And it's invidious erosions of individual liberty, it's absolutely a travesty. Every one of my books I tee off on political correctness because I love being politically incorrect. It's fundamental freedom we have to be ourselves. Who's responsible for my state of mind? Me. Can you offend me? No, I can take offense at something you say. You could harm me, and that would be wrong. It's certainly wrong to go around harming people physically. It's also wrong to subject children to incessantly to abuses of various kinds verbally. This can inflict emotional damage on them when they're vulnerable and young. But as adults, we're supposed to be able to be responsible for our own states of mind. And so if you choose to be offended, then you'll go around looking for it. And if the system rewards you for being offended, you're going to find offense at every turn. And this is what happened to Vincent. Somebody in his company took umbrage at his taste in art and made a complaint. So he got called in, and the guy and his boss says, look, you got to take the painting down. And Vincent says, well, what if I don't want to? He says, well, you could resign. Well, Vincent was a prudential person, and good journalism jobs don't grow on trees, so he took the painting down, but it upset him, okay? He was angry, definitely, and very upset. And this went on for a while. He didn't go postal. That's still an expression. He didn't go back to the office with an AK-47 and shoot the place up. He had the good sense, not to take out his frustrations on others, but he was still bothered by it. So he came to me, and we resolved this problem in one session. And we resolved it by using the philosophy of John Stuart Mill. And John Stuart Mill, in his great and heroic defense of individual liberty, says that, in fact, the only warrant that a government or any authority has to constrain you is to prevent you from doing harm to others. And Vincent's taste in art was not doing any harm to anybody. He was just expressing his individuality. But since we have confused offense with harm, and we've now legislated that confusion, anybody who's merely deciding to take offense can declare that they've been harmed, and then they have a remedy and have power over people. It's terrible. So once I made Vincent understand that John Stuart Mill had addressed this question, and in fact it was a systemic problem, and didn't have to take it personally, then he really felt a lot better. He understood that his problem was fundamentally a question of justice and injustice. It wasn't a mental illness. And in fact, his unhappiness and his anger and his frustration and his depression or dysthemia, if it had gone on for a long enough time, would be in fact all stemming from this case of injustice. It's a philosophical problem. It's not a psychological problem. So we resolved it with John Stuart Mill. And then I gave him a little bit of social judo, a lesson in, I call it social judo. I said, why don't you go back to the office and draw up a short list of alternative paintings, that you wouldn't mind having up in your cubicle, and go around and ask your coworkers to sign off. So, do you approve of this? Okay, I'll put it up. This way, you can satisfy yourself, and you can also have a good laugh in the process, which he did. So we turned his upset state of mind into a serene and even a laughing state of mind, where he could rise above these circumstances. I didn't prescribe drugs. I didn't touch him. I didn't examine him. I didn't diagnose him. I talked with him. The power of ideas is undervalued. Vincent had this problem, certainly. And the problem was something that was caused at work, not something caused in his childhood, and not something caused by some kind of brain disorder. This was a real problem of injustice in the workplace, and he had absolutely no avenue of remedy in the workplace for it. He couldn't undo the enormous amount of damage that political correctness has done to our society. He had not the power. I don't. None of us has the power to undo it, except individually on a case-by-case basis where we struggle against it and triumph over it. But certainly these injustices caused, in the first instance, a lot of anger. And Vincent, being a man, was also brought up probably to kind of suppress his emotions. He wasn't running around weeping or screaming or being hysterical. He was taught to kind of bear it nobly, and to just carry himself. But inside, he was definitely very angry. Buddhists teach that anger is one of the great there are three mental poisons, anger, greed, and envy, and they eat away at us. This really is a poison. If you're angry and nothing's being done to resolve the anger or to dissolve the anger, then definitely the anger can eat away at us and produce all kinds of anxiety, sleeplessness, secondary and tertiary effects, which eventually can become medical. I mean, I've counseled lots of people who've been in the throes of some kind of crisis or on the horns of a dilemma, and if they're not able to resolve the immediate problem, which in fact might be an ethical problem or a professional problem, then they can develop mental or physical symptoms from it. But in the first instance, the problem always needs to be identified and addressed in its root domain. So Sir Vincent was, once we started talking, able to articulate that he was very angry, he was very upset. He didn't like his life at the moment. Every time he went to work, it made him unhappy because he was immersing himself in this environment which did not value him and which he felt in some fundamental way was denying him some basic civil right. And that's a very serious issue for anybody to face. The problem is that he did not have any remedy for it until he discovered philosophy. How to distinguish this from psychology or psychiatry? I tell this story when I talk to psychologists, and they roll up their sleeves, the first part of it describing Vincent. Hey, this guy's angry, we can work on his anger. Psychology is very much, and rightfully, concerned with affect, emotion. So they're going to work on his anger. They could work on his anger for 10 years. They'll never touch the heart of his case, which was a question of justice. Psychoanalysts would have a field day with this guy. Gauguin nudes? Oh yeah, we could lie Vincent on the couch for 10 years and psychoanalyze him and discover why he likes to hang, Gauguin nudes in his office. That's not going to solve his problem. He can get as much psychoanalysis as he can pay for. The problem was injustice. That's philosophical. To understand in a sort of general way what kinds of things happen or can happen in a philosophical counseling session. Generally speaking, we're aware when there's a problem, when something is not right. You have some sense of that. So then you have to determine what kind of problem it is. But it could be anything. It could be what Vincent had at work. It could be a relationship going bad. It could be, a career change. It could be not knowing what to do. It could be having too many choices. It could be the subprime crisis. Whatever it is, if there's a problem, then we have a response. The first response is emotional. We're programmed. This is our hardwiring. So emotions are really, really basic. But we have to learn how to deal with them. Most importantly, learn how to express them appropriately. And the real trick is to transform them. Yes, to take a negative emotion and to transform it into something positive. So you get over the emotion, then you want to start to figure out, okay, what can I do? What should I do, what shouldn't I do? And you can do the analytical work. And a lot of people can do this. And then they get stuck. Because often the analysis just leads to an impasse, or it leads to a more complicated scenario, or maybe you don't see your way through. And maybe your analysis is telling you, there's nothing I can do about this. That could also be the result of analysis. Like you can analyze the global recession till the cows come home. What are you going to do about it? The analysis might tell you there's nothing we can do about it today. It's going to take a few years. So your analysis itself might not necessarily give you a desirable result immediately. So that's why you need more. Take a step back, metaphorically, put the problem into some kind of creative, contemplative light where you can conceive of the problem in a different way. That's where a philosopher can really help. You talk to a philosopher, you're going to get a different perspective anyway, guaranteed. If you get through that, you reach E, which is equilibrium. That's the last step in the peace process. The equilibrium is wonderful because actually then you feel like you felt before the first problem occurred. Difference is, you have a takeaway, you have a tool. If you went through the process, you've got a philosophical tool now that you didn't have before. And that's portable. And it's not a prescription, it doesn't have to be refilled. You can carry this idea with you and use it again next time, or use a variation of it next time. So you've grown. The process has also grown you philosophically.